Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Larry Jacobs. This is Pre-K-12 Education Talk Radio. We're going to talk about higher ed today, however. Okay, it's the 21st, first day of spring, 2023, and thanks for being with us today. Happy springtime. We're expecting 5 to 8 inches of snow on Saturday in Maine here, just so you know that, okay? So spring is relative. It's a relative term. Welcome to today's show. I'm thrilled to have two incredible guests with me today. Dr. Sigal Ben-Porath from the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Education. She is an expert on free speech in higher education and throughout democratic institutions throughout the U.S. She's written a great book called Cancel Wars. Okay, she's offered guidance to many, many campuses on policy development and responses to controversies surrounding speech, which you know is a big issue these days. And we also have the person who helped me put all this together, Dr. Juliana Poore-Lugaev, okay? And she is a clinical associate professor at the School of Education at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, okay? So this is going to be a terrific show. We're going to talk about free speech, new college in Florida. I think probably we'll mention Governor DeSantis along the line. I want to talk to Dr. Ben-Porath about her colleague at the University of Pennsylvania, Amy Wax, okay? Sigal will listen to that, and we'll bring them on in just a second. I just want everybody to know we're going to archive the show over at our usual place, which is ace-ed.org. That's the home website of our Consortium for Equity in Education, ace-ed.org, and I do hope you go over there and check out what we do. Join with us. Everything we do is free for educators, okay? So please check it out, okay, ace-ed.org. And without further ado, I want to bring on these two incredible professors. And there we go. We're getting it. Okay, let's start with the person who put it together. Juliana, are you there?
I am. Hi, how are you this morning?
I am fine. How are you today? Are you in Baltimore? Where are you today?
Yeah, I'm just south of Baltimore in Catonsville. And
okay.
We have daffodils instead of snow here.
I'm looking out at about 2 feet of snow still on my lawn. And like I said, welcome to spring. 5 to 8 inches due here in Maine on Saturday. And, Dr. Ben-Porath, am I pronouncing your first name right? Is it Sigal?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you for telling me that. I was curious about that. It is such a pleasure to have you here today. Okay, and by the way, you teach at University of Pennsylvania. I grew up not too far from there. You were at about 38th Street West, and I grew up at 76 West. Okay, 76th Street. Yeah, from Overbrook Park.
Practically neighbors, yes.
Practically neighbors. Do you live in Philly?
I live right outside of Philly.
Good enough. Okay, and I think from the looks of your phone, I think it's the Jersey side.
Right, yes.
There you
I got
go.
my phone in Jersey, definitely. So phone-wise, I'm a Jersey girl.
Jersey girls are A-okay by me. Juliana, we're K-12 here, but I'm so interested in this. I want to delve into, if I make a bad rhyme here, delve into K-12, but you are both college professors. You're both at schools of education. Okay, we have to look at the way higher education is training teachers. We have to think about that. We have to talk about the whole free speech thing. And, of course, it all boils down these days even worse than it ever did. And I guess it always did to a certain extent, but to politics, okay, and all that sort of thing and what's going on these days. Juliana, I know you are so interested in what's going on at the new college in Florida, okay? There's been a change in the trustees, the state-run organization that moves basically from liberal to conservative, and just talk about your interest there. And also tell us what you do over at the Johns Hopkins, because I did want to get to that first. You're with the International Mind, Brain, and Education Society. You helped found that, and you've written some research on that. And I think that neuroscience, okay, and the way we learn is extremely important, and we don't do enough to teach new teachers about it. All right? And so just talk about your background and how you got involved with New College, et cetera. Juliana Poore-Lugaev.
Thank you so much, Larry. So when I was in graduate school, it was in the late 90s, and functional MRI, this is the technology that when you see pictures of the brain with little blobs of color on it. Functional MRI really had just been discovered, and it was the early days of trying to connect neuroscience and education. So other student and faculty worked together to create the International Mind, Brain, and Education Society, which is a effort to connect not just neuroscience and education, but practitioners into the process of understanding how to do education differently and better. And really, I sit in that space. I sit in that space in between educational research and educational practice. And in that way, I've worked on curriculum topics in K-12 spaces. I've worked to understand and support families affected by pediatric cancer for the processes that they've got to go through as they interact with an education system in this new space when their child may have been affected cognitively by pediatric cancer. My connection to New College and to Florida in general includes that I was a middle schooler at Boca Middle in Florida, and I went to Spanish River High School in Boca Raton, Florida. So shout out.
It's where my parents lived for years.
Yeah.
Where my parents lived.
My drama teacher, Rita Dominic, who I'm actively in touch with, as early as a week ago. This goes back to the 80s when I was there. And my debate coach, Bert Podhurst. The experiences I had in my Florida high school setting allowed me exposure to books that weren't banned, and I appreciate that. And I went on from there to New College. So New College, as you mentioned, it's a public liberal arts college. It's the honors college of the state system. And it is both unusual and sort of what I hope education can always be for people, because it is a space of inquiry and action. When you imagine a college as a place where you're staying up, late each night, talking with friends, trying to understand how the world works, deeply exploring the ideas that you're exposed to, whether it's through literature, political science, the sciences. New College is a place like that, where you literally will find almost anybody that you talk to is just interested in understanding and thinking together and taking action, where it's appropriate. So the Florida being a sunshine state, when we understood that...
Yeah, we hope it's sunshine of the mind. We hope it's sunshine of the mind besides just the skin. If you may continue, please. Yes.
When we understood that DeSantis was bringing in 6 new trustees all at once, which was unusual because regulatorily they need to bring them in a staggered basis. But this Board of Trustees has enormous power for defining leadership at the campus and for setting the mission of the school. So bringing in 6 people who are just diametrically opposed to free thinking, in the sense that, we are more than open at New College and, for me personally, more than open to viewpoints that are highly diverse. But it doesn't seem that they are. It seems that what they want to do is to bring in exclusively conservative viewpoints. But really, while I'm very, very interested in New College, what brought me to you is that on January 31st, we watched the Board of Trustees' first meeting when the conservative folks were brought in. And in that meeting, they fired the then current President Oker. Before they held the vote, before they publicly said in the meeting that there was even going to be a vote, an email was circling around the alums that congratulated now interim President Corcoran on his having been put into that position. And that was very, very disturbing on all kinds of levels. So it really began what has become for me and very, very deep dive. And it led me to see how the actions of now interim President Corcoran, previously commissioner of K-12 education in Florida, how these actions are really about a challenge to academic freedom and to educational freedom around the state. So at the K-12 level, really controlling in a very new and different way what kids are and aren't allowed to read, and having that be decided by big government in a way that's very, very dangerous and scary.
I agree with you. By the way, I read where Hampshire College, another liberal college in Massachusetts, has invited new college students to apply there, and they will admit them. Okay, so they can which is good. That's good, but it doesn't solve the problem of new college. Okay, which brings, and here's the challenge, which is just, it's so wild. It just strikes me. And Julianne, I get it. I didn't know that you have the Boca Raton connection at Spanish River. That's right where my parents lived, on Spanish River Road. Okay. What can I tell you? Okay. Again, Philadelphia migration routes. All right. Seagal probably knows about those. Okay. And, but the fact that you went to new college, it's unbelievable. And my question, it's conservative, and Seagal's going to give me the answer because she wrote Cancel Wars about higher education. Seagal, it's a state-run college. Can't they do what they want? That would make it kind of political to begin with. I understand Julianne is distressed. Believe me, I do. Okay, but what's wrong with putting in conservative as opposed to liberal? And I don't agree with it, but then again, Seagal, help us, Dr. Benpora.
Right. So, public education is this unique animal, right? Both in the K-12 and the higher ed levels, because in higher ed, in public education, you do have a structured opportunity for the government to have a voice, because the government is seen as a representative of the people, of the public, right?
Yep.
And so they do have permission to, for example, make decisions about curriculum or about other, core ways in which programs at both of these levels operate. At the same time, organizing these interventions in a way that is driven by narrow ideological perspectives, while not illegal, it is not illegal, but it is surely both unusual and, I would argue, inappropriate, right? Because
I would
the
agree.
effort here, right, the effort here is to intervene in the institutional and professional autonomy of these institutions, again, whether K-12 or higher ed, and to make decisions about their internal operations, such as, which departments are going to be supported or canceled, which professors are staying or going. And the whole idea of some levels of professional autonomy and institutional autonomy is really meant to shield learning institutions, educational institutions from exactly this type of direct government intervention. So in my view, again, while these processes may not be illegal, right? Yeah. And of course, that's up for debate in terms of the policies and the particular, legal guidance that regulates them. Even if they are not illegal, they are surely not aligned with notions of professionalism, academic freedom, open inquiry, and the like, So they really don't support the way that we think about education in a democratic country in which the government doesn't get the full and final say on what happens in each classroom.
And let me be the devil's advocate here. Would conservative people say the same thing about the way New College was? I'm going to ask Seagal on that one. Okay, and
Right.
again, I'm playing the devil's advocate. I don't agree with what's going on down there, but there are always two sides to every story, if I may. Okay, would
Right.
they say, well, it was way too?
So
Yeah, it's state run. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, definitely there could be two sides to each story, although they are not always necessarily equally valid, right? So people can have different opinions on this matter for sure, and their ideological can drive that. I would say that if somebody thought that New College, Florida, or other educational institutions do not properly represent some positions, then definitely they can try and influence that or raise their voice about that or try and have some support for these additional voices. But I would say that broadly speaking, in education generally and again at the various levels, the curriculum is not broadly driven by ideology. Sometimes commitments within the particular parts of the curriculum can reflect ideas that are more favorable by one or the other ideology, and we can have a push and pull about that. But I think, for example, if you want to teach American history, it makes no sense to try and to try and balance factual commitment to narrative history and the way that it's understood within the discipline with preferred perspectives that are not grounded in facts, right? So we're not going to balance, fact with inaccuracy, right? Education is committed to and a certain true perspective, right? Rather than ideological perspective. And sometimes there could be aspects that, right, and if New College is overly leaning in a certain direction, and you know what, it might be. I never visited there. I don't know, but it's not impossible to think that there could be small liberal arts colleges that are more leaning progressive in terms of the student body and maybe also in terms of the faculty leaning. It's not unheard of, right? But I don't think that the way to fix it is to come in with the government hand and try to rebalance it. There are other ways that institutions are trying to correct for that and that the public is trying to correct for that. And I think they are more aligned with the way that a good public or other, but definitely public college can operate rather than having the governor come in and place his own people and they wreak havoc, on the leadership and the student body and the curriculum and declare that they want to get rid of the current students and replace them with a different type of student that's going to be, leaning differently. That's just not the right way to do it, even if the concerns are partly valid.
Yeah, and of course I agree with you. Okay, I really do. All right, it's just ridiculous. And the students are going to go back to you in just a second, Juliana. The students who went there for, quote, a liberal education. Okay, there are colleges that are conservative, okay, or Roberts, Liberty University, okay, as good examples. They are conservative, okay. Somebody with a liberal leaning isn't probably going to go to those schools, okay.
Right.
But those are private. Okay, not public. Okay. Yes.
Right.
Go ahead.
Although I just want to really briefly say, Larry, New College is liberal with a small L, right? Obviously, as you know, right? So it doesn't mean that this is a college that is leaning liberal or progressive in its ideological perspective. Right.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask Juliana. Juliana, you're a graduate, okay? Okay. We talk about all this. And again, there's nothing wrong with this from my perspective, because students can pick the college they want to go to. All right, but again, it's a public thing run by the governor. Right? Can I tell you? That's the danger. Okay, was it? I have to find it, Julia. Okay, was it quote liberal in terms of politics?
I think in some ways I think that's the wrong question to ask. Right?
Then send me on the right way, Doctor.
I mean, as Sigal brought out, right, it's not a question about whether a given set of students and faculty at a given moment in historical time have had conversations and interests and curiosities that lead toward a curriculum where there are predominant views among the people who are there at the time that are more liberal or conservative. The question is whether, as an institution, it has a specific mission to be conservative, to be liberal. And in making a statement that the new trustees want to make New College the Hillsdale of the South, when Hillsdale College is a very specifically, as is their absolute right to be, a private liberal arts college that teaches that the center of knowledge is exclusively from a Western perspective, and that as a religious institution, they have other sorts of views. And here also, again, New College is just one example of a very broad strategy that's being utilized not just to cut off the heads at the Board of Trustee level, but in our public school systems, we're seeing that the school board members, many new school board members are coming in specifically supported logistically by DeSantis, many of whom don't have kids in public schools, that have kids in private schools. And they go in and they fire the superintendent. And it's creating this huge destabilizing force. In Broward County,
without question,
they have had 3 superintendents so far this year. It's very, very challenging for
Which county did you just say? Which county did you just
Broward.
say? Broward, I know,
Yeah. And there's multiple positions for superintendencies that can't be filled by the by the state because of the destabilization. And I think that is by design. I don't think it is of high concern because
I agree.
There are very clear statements that the goal is to pull funding from public schools using the voucher system that the new legislation that's going through now will allow anybody to pull their funds through. And this means money going to kids and families who were never in public school in the first place in many cases. And once the money goes into a private charter school or another private school of this entity, there's no more tracking of it. So now your tax dollars are going into the tax system, and then they're going behind closed doors with no accountability. They can hire a contractor to do the grounds, a contractor to teach the kids. And once it's a contractor, there's no more regulatory supports. And there's no reporting on how well your kids are doing, no federal protections for your kids in terms of the character of the education and the quality of the education that they receive. So allowing this to continue really is it's just handing the keys to the public coffers over and pulling public voice out of public education.
Well, I would agree. I would agree with you. Half the public. I have to say it this way. I do agree with. I'm in a bad position here because I agree with you. I just want to try to play the devil's advocate, if I may. Okay.
Please do.
Yeah, this because I do agree with you guys. I really do. Okay, but half of the public is very conservative. All right, and I'm not arguing their point of view, but they feel like they've been left out of the situation. All right, and one of the challenges we have in public education is that teachers and public educators, superintendents, etc., haven't been trained to deal with this and defend themselves and what we're doing so well. It's so hard to do, okay, to people. So they're looking for a way to gain control, to get their ideas into the school, all right? And I think it's going to be, I mean, we are in for some big challenges, okay? And everybody knows this, and nobody can fight the good. They're trying to fight the good fight without the real training we need. And there people who are educators are facing some real challenges now, okay? For what I always say is lower pay than most other professions, okay, for which they've gone into student debt, et cetera, et cetera. Superintendents don't want the aggravation. What do we do, Juliana? I mean, I agree with you, but what do you do about this? Okay, do you wait 5 years and everybody says, oh, look how lousy the schools are, and then we put in somebody else into politics and just start switching back and forth again? What do we do?
So I'll just say that.
And I hope my little rant there made sense. The whole thing aggravates me. I got to tell you, it aggravates me so badly. I can't believe it. But we have to do something and take into account respect for the other side as well. Go ahead.
As awful as this experience has been as a new college alum, watching so many things that I value being torn apart, I am also so incredibly heartened. And every single day I have dialogue with a new person who is, or, a new old friend who's associated with the new college community in some way, and or just really caring about what's happening in the public K-12 space in general. Because these things are happening not just in Florida. DeSantis is working on it in concert with other governors in other states. So what do?
Well, our Arkansas and Virginia has good examples.
Yeah, that's right. But you work with people. You work with people who hold conservative viewpoints. You work with people who hold liberal viewpoints. And you understand that, I mean, everybody likes to say, but it truly is the case that there's more that unites us than divides us. And while there are folks who are true believers on the ideological ends of the spectrum, and as Sigal says, there are always at least two sides, right? But it doesn't mean that every side is as grounded as others. But there is an awful lot of middle ground. So my suggestion in terms of what we do what America is built for us to do. We work together in a democratic space, and we go to the school board meetings and be voices of reason and, ears that listen with goodwill.
Can I just add for 1 second? And
go ahead, Sigal.
I want to agree with all of that, but I really just want to add that the framing that, half the country is conservative and we need to take their perspectives, diverse perspectives within that camp into account is completely true. But I don't think this is necessarily what's happening here because, in fact, when you look over decades and decades on how people think about and feel about and observe public education, the public supports public education across ideological perspectives, conservatives and liberals, right and left wing, particularly parents who are sending their children to public schools, they tend to love their public schools. And this is a relatively stable phenomenon, right, with some fluctuation.
You're right. You're right.
A lot of the people who are critical of public education, public schools, public colleges, a lot of the people who are critical are people who are not, in fact, a part of the system as parents or participants. And so I think that protecting, defending, and supporting public education at all levels is not a progressive or left-wing agenda. It's actually an agenda that crosses boundaries. It's not even middle ground, which is important. It's common ground. It's a ground that we all are standing on. All maybe it's an exaggeration, but, a vast majority of this country really loves and supports public institutions of education, and to the extent that they need improvement or that they need further expansion of the perspectives that are offered there, I think that's par for the course. I mean, we are always, rethinking curricula and revising required courses. And, in Arizona right now, there is a significant effort to introduce civic education at the higher education level. And there are some lovely, innovative, and important ideas that are being developed there to ensure that all students are able to think about diverse perspectives and about democratic values, etc. Mm-hmm. So, and this is also coming from a conservative legislature, right? Yes, and a group of people with diverse ideologies, definitely including conservative and libertarian folks. So these are things that can be done in a collaborative, thoughtful, and actually, a common ground way that is not driven by an effort of creating an ideological takeover.
Yeah. I love your thought, but the one argument or the one thing I would disagree with you is when you said that a lot of people are not part of the system, okay? And due to the way we raise taxes for education, whether or not you have children in school or whatever, they are part of the system of funding and influencing the schools. And you know this as well as I do. Okay, they are part of the system,
true.
and we have to influence them. We have to influence them for them to understand exactly what you just
familiar.
Said.
Right. Yeah. I just meant people who are less intimately and immediately familiar with the working of the system. Of course, they are a part of it, but it's a public system, right?
Well, the one challenge we always have with the education is that everybody went through pretty much most people went through public school. Okay, and their memory of public school is what they think public schools could be now. When I was a kid, we didn't need all these computers and all this sort of stuff. Well, that's not the way it is. Okay, but that's the way people look at education, and then they're influenced by the politics. And you're both exactly right. We have to. I do understand that we have that not both sides are equal, but there are two sides. Okay, that we have to get people back to talking about this. But, boy, we are having a terrible time doing it. And in the meantime, we're letting one side dominate this, okay? And it's just terrible. And the classic example, we have to go to higher, well, also K-12, is what's going on in Florida right now. My God, in Florida, they've not to pick on Florida, but I guess we can today. Okay, they were worried that learning about Rosa Parks would make a child who's not African American feel guilty. Okay, they're removing Rosa Parks, all right, from public education. Think about that. Okay,
and we are thinking about it.
And I'm always reminded, and this is something that most people do not understand, okay? Germany had to face up to the Holocaust, all right? And for about 10 years after the war, they never did. That was not even mentioned in education or in the news, okay, in Germany. And finally, around 1957, 58, they started to realize that the challenge of that. Okay, how insane that was. Okay, you have to face up to your own history. Okay, that's what makes things better. Okay, and we've got to do something about this, and it's just so hard to get people to do it. And which brings me to another question I have to ask, and it has to do with the University of Pennsylvania, Sigal. You're probably familiar with this too, Juliana. A colleague of yours over there is named Professor Amy Wax in the law school. Are you familiar with this, Sigal?
Yep.
Yeah, you probably know her. Okay, and the challenges she has extremely. Just to preface it, she has extremely conservative views in the eyes of her students, especially those students of color or of underrepresented groups at the law school. And everybody has to go through her course, and she has made comments that could be considered quite rude, all right, quite rude, and so there's been a movement now to have this tenured professor removed. All right, but the school, I believe, University of Pennsylvania, is standing behind her, though I'm sure they do not agree with these comments. Okay, and now for the champion, okay, of free speech, okay, is her colleague Sigal Ben-Pora. Okay, Dr. Wax's Professor Wax's colleague. So what's going on over there, Sigal, from the inside? You're the expert.
Right. Well, so that's a little bit of a tough spot for me, Larry, just because this is a personnel process that is currently underway, and I would say just very generally about the process, but I really cannot comment on it as long as it's ongoing. But I would just say, broadly speaking, that tenure, of course, the system of tenure, both for K-12 teachers and for professors, is a very important system that is meant to protect the freedom that these individuals have to do research and to teach in a way that is unencumbered by, the shifting winds of the public or the shifting preferences of elected officials. And the notion of tenure, and more broadly the notion of academic freedom and similar protection, is really meant to ensure that we do not have ideology as the driver of personnel or other research decisions, particularly in higher education, but also in K-12. And we are seeing, in fact, that people who are most at risk for being fired from their positions in higher education are people who are currently teaching about race and racial history, or about gender and women's equality or gender diversity or similar topics in states that are, that are driven by conservative ideological perspectives in the legislature and the governors mentioned. So the story at the University of Pennsylvania, without going into details, is actually a story where the institution is trying to use proper procedures to address concerns that were raised by students. It's not an instance, as is happening in some of the states that we're talking about previously,
right. It's a different story.
In which the government comes in and says, "Oh, no more gender studies, we're closing the department. No more African American studies, we're closing the department. Everyone is fired," which I think is and should be significant concerns to people who worry about academic freedom and free speech.
Yeah, it should be. And, there's an interesting thing at the University of Pennsylvania that just struck me, and that is that the students, who are protesting, and again, you don't have to say anything on this, the students that are protesting Dr. Wax, and I don't agree with her statements the way I read them, I don't know if you read other things, but what I read, I don't agree with, neither do the students, and it becomes an economic factor. If economics matters, to the life of a university, if you insult the students, the students are going to leave. All right, the students are going to leave. You're insulting your customers. All right, and that's a strange balance that you have to deal with. And students today, you know this, Sigal, better than I do. Students today are so touchy about these things. We hear about all this, and they keep using woke.
Can I just read to you,
of course,
very quickly a quote that says, "Students today are too sensitive to take part in the rough hurly-burly of the actual work of the world." This is a quote from Teddy Roosevelt in 1908.
Wow.
So I just want to say...
That's great. That's great.
The notion that students today are overly sensitive is a perennial notion. We always hear about that. I don't think they were overly sensitive in 1908, and I don't think they're overly sensitive now. I think students are coming with a democratic message that says everyone should be properly included in our learning community. And this message, even if sometimes they overstate it or sometimes they respond too strongly to something that could be, responded to more, in more thoughtfully. Sure, they are young, they are enthusiastic and passionate, and sometimes they overreact. I mean, I'm not coming here to say every word that every student has ever said has been correct. If that was the case, they would have nothing to learn, right? And we all have something to learn, and they come to college to learn. But I'm not worried about their being overly sensitive. I think students are committed to a democratic vision, and we ought to listen to them rather than call them snowflakes.
That was beautifully put and made me laugh. And boy, that just we need perspective in all this, and that's one of the best perspectives on all this I have heard. And we just, wow, it's just amazing. What's going to happen? Hey, Juliana, what's going to happen? What do you expect to happen with New College? I know you're upset about it, and you should be. Okay, I am too. I think it's ridiculous. But what's going to happen? What do you think?
I think it depends a lot on the degree to which the real will of the voters comes through. There's a University of North Florida poll that shows that 61% of folks in Florida oppose the current legislation that prohibits campus activities that are related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, that in general, there's very large majorities of Democrats, 79%, of independents, 68%, who oppose the higher education reforms that DeSantis is trying to push through. Only a slim majority of Republicans, 56%, support them. And I think that as long as we let people vote, and we let them vote in ways that demonstrate their conscience, that we will come out on the right side of this. In the short term, I can tell you that the students that are there now are, they're in a mix of all the positions you would think they might be. They're fearful. They have a trustee who says that he is a soldier in DeSantis' army, and that he wants, as a soldier, to bring Hillsdale College into New College. So, that is a concern. Whatever happens to New College, the students who are there now are getting a tremendous education about a number of things, including how much communities come together when there are significant threats to fundamental freedoms. And that's what I want the New College students who are there now to know, that we are there for them, and that we are there for them regardless of their political viewpoints.
I'll agree with that. We are there for them, and at May last, Hampshire College has stepped up for them. I'll say that again. Okay, for the kids, it's really brutal out there. Which brings me to my last question for both of you, and both of you are professors at schools of education. And as you both know, fewer and fewer people are becoming educators. All right, and that's a problem. That's a challenge. And with all this that we're talking about here and all the pressure we put people under as they become educators, again, they spend a lot of money for one of the lower paying professions. It's a great profession, but it's one of the lower paying professions. All right, yet the tuition to college is the same. Okay, when you can become an engineer and make $90,000 a year, you become a teacher. Okay, you can make $35,000 a year, but you still have to pay the same amount of that back to the university. Where are we going to find how do we get people to become teachers these days with all this pressure on them? I'm going to go to Juliana first. Juliana?
I was hoping you had that answer, Larry.
I don't.
No.
I don't.
I think that, until we move away from a space that vilifies teachers, which is really what we have at the moment, right? We have a situation where we love our teachers, right? Any given family, they love the teachers that they have.
It's true.
But there is a national narrative that is inaccurate, but which needs to be pushed back against. So somebody like Larry Arnn, the president of Hillsdale College, who says, that he doesn't see why teachers even need to be trained because anybody can be a teacher. It's, a sense of just a fundamental misunderstanding about what's, about what is needed. We need to help teachers feel respected by respecting them.
Right.
Absolutely. And
Right.
I just want to say something else. I want to say something else about that. Juliana, where you are on training teachers with neuroscience and the mind and brain and all that, I hope that becomes an intrinsic part of training educators. Because I was trained to be a teacher a long, long time ago. Okay, none of that ever even came up. Okay, and we know so much more about how people learn. I have a Bachelor of Science in Education, but believe me, there was no science involved. Believe me, there was no science involved. Okay? And there should be. We know how people learn, and that's what we're supposed to do. And I think when we get that together and have people change the way teachers are taught, okay, and really get into the science of education, I think people are going to respect like they respect most scientists. I hope they do. Okay, in terms of their training. And Sigal, what do you think about all this, about getting people to become teachers?
Well, so I surely agree with you that it's important to train teachers in, in the significant types of research like the one Juliana is involved in.
Yeah.
I also agree that respecting teachers, supporting teachers, and definitely paying teachers, like the Red for Ed movement was fighting for a couple of years ago. These are important aspects. I think the most important part is not only just getting people to join teacher education programs and be trained as teachers. The hardest part is retaining teachers.
Yes, it
teachers
is.
are leaving the profession because they are unsupported, because their work is being scrutinized in a negative fashion, and because they are becoming demoralized by the expectations that we have of them. They want to do their work, and we're not letting them do their work the way that they relate to children. They want to support their development, and instead, either we are focusing all of our attention on standards and exams instead of professionalization of the workforce, or we are focusing our attention on these rather ridiculous ideological fights. And I think supporting teacher and providing them space to express their professionalism and their capacity, and to give them the professional development that they need to continue acting effectively, I think that's the way that we should go. And I hope that some states, at least, are going to offer a counterbalance to the processes we've been talking about, and provide greater support for teachers to do their work in the way that they know how to do.
Both of you, you're right at the cusp of all this, and you're just two excellent educators. And by the way, just so you know this, Juliana, Dave Steiner, your good friend over there, is going to come on the show next week. He'll be here. Yeah, he's just a wonderful person. And please tell your other good buddy, Ashley Berner, I said hi. Okay, somebody I just adored.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I always think, whenever, I have to tell you both this, whenever somebody brings up, and I bring it up all the time, how important a rigorous education is. That's when I always think of Ashley Berner over at Johns Hopkins. She is a leader in that, okay, and she's just amazing. And so are you, Juliana.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, and I'm so grateful that you gave us an opportunity to talk and learn from you and talk together about the very challenging situation in Florida and other states right now.
It's just brutal, and thank you thank you for introducing me to Sigal. Sigal, you are just wonderful. My New Jersey girl, okay, at the University of Pennsylvania, okay. And
thank you so much.
Your book book is Cancel Wars, and I am going to be buying that book because that is something that's just so top of mind for me, what's going on at universities. You are really an expert in free speech at universities, and I can't thank both of you. Thank you so much. You're always welcome here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Mine too.
Thank you.
Take care, both of you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. That's Juliana Pare. Whoops, let me close this one down. Juliana Pare Lagoyev of Johns Hopkins School of Education, and she is, wow, she's got this Mind, Brain, and Education Society. That's where she is, and I'll tell you, that's exactly where education training needs to go, into the neuroscience of knowledge and learning. And Sigal Ben Porath at the University of Pennsylvania, both of them were just so wonderful. And her book is about free speech. She's an expert on this, free speech in higher ed, and it's called Cancel Wars. And I'm going to get that book because that's something that really matters to me. All right, we're going to archive the show at ace-ed.org. Okay, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm Larry Jacobs.